Welcome, Dr. James Beckett Sports Card Insights. I want to thank my sponsors, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. So here's an episode for your listening enjoyment. Welcome, Dr. James Beckett Sports Card Insights, Ramblings with Rich. I guess I ramble too. Thanks, sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Panini, Upper Deck, and Topps. The first rambling, Rich, we got some things that you had on your mind for me and I had on my mind. You were talking about in the old days when I set up at shows, what was my motivation?
Yes.
You listed a whole bunch of things. Like, did you want to make some money? Did you want to see the good stuff that was out there? Did you want to network and meet other collectors and dealers? All those are true. The fourth one you said, did you do that as a favor to another promoter? That's less likely, but it probably did happen. Sometimes if it was a local show and there were Dearborn shows back in those days when I was in Bowling Green, I'd go up in the suburbs of Detroit. It wasn't a fabulous show, but it was worth going up to. And if the promoter said, hey, I got a table for you. You want to come up? I would do that. But I love walking out with more money, seeing more cards, maybe, and also getting some new cards and seeing old friends and making new friends.
Back in the day, Mike Gordon had two shows. He had a monthly show in Parsippany and a monthly show in Nanuet, New York. The Parsippany show was great. The Nanuet, New York show, maybe 40 minutes away from each other. They were basically equidistant from my house. The Nanuet show was nowhere near as good as the Parsippany show. The Parsippany show was the rocker, and the Nanuet show was meh at best. But you did the Nanuet show to make sure you could keep doing the Parsippany show.
Okay.
So in a sense, you were doing a favor to the promoter. You were selling out that show so you could do the better show.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm not setting up anymore. And the reason is that I hated being behind the table, Rich. I think you know that. I wanted to be out and about. And like we talked about table sharing or subleasing and all that stuff, I wanted to shut down my table and roam. But promoters don't like that, and it's bad for sales. If you're
I like being behind the table, but I like roaming too. Dallas has always been very interesting because in most of the rest of the country, a lot of the business is done before shows is dealer to dealer. Dallas, a lot of the business, at least at the small shows, are done during and after the show, after some sales are made, and then the money that's been taken in is being circulated around the room. There were actually trade nights at some of the old shows I ran or some of Kyle's old shows before there was an official trade night designated. Now I realized it was trade nights. If I was smart, I would have realized that, but it was like, I've been there since 7:00 this morning. I just want to go home.
Yeah, right. The trade night at the National being in the room or in the building, especially with transportation being tricky after hours there. I'm going to make a provocative statement. You agree or disagree? I believe that I have more confidence in the low end of the sports card market than I do in the high end.
I'm with you 100%. You know why? Because there's more of them out there. And it's also the more affordable price point to enter. Rob Veras, our mutual friend, always talked about BTE, barrier to entry. But in today's world, there's enough cards out there on the lower end, the shallow end of the pool, where you can enter for reasonable prices. If all you want to do is buy expensive graded RPA cards after the only 9 or 10 of some one-of-one refractor, go at it. You're also limiting the amount of people with these really expensive cards who can play in the game. But almost anybody can play in the game with a $20 bill. One thing Fanatics has done, which I think is a very underrated decision on their part, blaster boxes at Walmart or Target, they're offering them as well directly to the store owners. That's great. Because I knew a couple managers of the stores, they tell me, no, you have a dollar bill in your pocket. It's a lot easier to spend that $20 at Walmart to get a blaster box than spend $80 or $100 or more for a box that you might get a $4 relic card out of. I think there's a really underrated move from Fanatics, frankly. Fanatics, they've done some things you want to shake your head at and say, why are you doing this? But overall, I think they've done a good job of working on increasing the market and working with the stores to get more people in at more affordable price points. And having good cards pulled from cheap packs does not hurt either.
The business aspect of that, Rich, is that by putting retail product into hobby shops, the hobby shops, I'm pretty sure they're paying more for that product. They're
probably paying above Walmart wholesale, but they're
saying Walmart, if it's a $20 blaster and Walmart's paying $10 in large quantity, maybe the hobby shops are getting for 15. So it's in Fanatic's best interest to more money for the same product.
Okay. And do you really blame them for making more money for the same product? But they understand that if that goes to the stores, they're also now centralizing where this product is going to. And I think centralizing where product is going is a good goal, actually.
They want people going to their authorized stores they're in relationship with. So I think that's good.
Right. And if you really get into the hobby, the $20 box can be your entree to, the $80 hobby that guarantees me the parallels, that guarantees me 20 inserts or maybe a good parallel and the hit that could be good or not good or 2 hits. That's your entree a lot of times into the better boxes too. So it's beneficial to all.
Okay. So we're both agreeing that we have more confidence in the low end of the market, the shallow end, the long tail, all that stuff. And so if I were to tell you, I know somebody that just left the hobby, I'm going to ask you to predict, do you think that's a whale chaser? Somebody that's looking for goats and high-end cards, or somebody that's a set builder that's building a collection? Which one do you think is more likely to have been the one that left the hobby?
I think the whale chaser is more likely, unless the price of the cards and the sets that the people are collecting get out of control. And if you have a price explosion in the really tough 60s high numbers, and the only thing you'll need left in 66 highs are maybe 10 of the short prints and 10 of the short prints in 67, maybe then you just get frustrated. But even then, you might say, okay, I didn't get those, but I can get other things. That's why the whale chasers, and I think I saw that a little bit at my show and a little bit at Kyle's last May show as well. Both our shows, the attendance was down a little, but every dealer I spoke to at both shows, my show, I had dealers tell me they had the best show they have ever had in our new build. Yet I drew a few less people than I did to the previous show. Most of the people that come to my show are not whales.
They're whale watchers.
They're whale watchers, but they're not.
Everybody like watchers.
Maybe 1 or 2 look for whales, but for the most part, they're not wanting to buy the whale.
Okay, I'll agree with that. Corollary to that, rambling here, if I were to tell you there was a price freeze, what would that mean to you?
That would mean I'm happy with what everything is, and I'll work around it. I've worked around almost anything, so I can work around that too.
2 thoughts about a price freeze. One, if there was like a mandate that prices can no longer go up or down, the price is the price, take it or leave it. So that would mean anybody that starts getting hot, you'd buy that. If they got cold, you'd say, I don't want, because the price is the price. Okay. But the other meaning of price freeze is you and I, or anybody else, and again, this applies more to the low end, that just says, you know what, this is the price I'm going to pay. I'm not going to pay more than $1 for these kind of cards, or more than $10 or $100 or $1,000. I have the price that I'm going to pay for a certain card. Even if the latest comp is more, I'm just saying no. I'm frozen in what I want to pay. I want to get a Luca card, and whether it books or the comps or whatever is $500. I got $250. And if it's a raw card, it's got to be near mint. It can't be a dog. So do people have the discipline? I think they do on the low end. And that's what strengthens the low end of the market. On the high end, I think there's a lack of discipline sometimes of people just thinking they have to pay what they have to pay. Instead,
that's the FOMO. That's the fear of missing out,
which causes the pricing to gyrate. And in the low end of the market, it doesn't gyrate because you say there's many other things I could try.
Jim, you and I go into value boxes. We pay what we pay in a value box, and we know what we're going in. I joke about missing 50%, but I'll miss a few percent. You'll miss a few percent. But mostly we get it right as to what we purchase and why we do it, because we understand instinctively what the price point should be. When you're in the value boxes, you understand the price point. Most of the people we see when we're going through the value boxes, they're regulars at the value boxes.
Rich, your mistakes, my mistakes, it's hard to quantify because they're like false positives. Means we bought it and then we got home and we realized, oh, that actually wasn't so good after all. Even a dime, a quarter, $1, $5, whatever it is, you get back and you say, you know what, I just messed up. That's the more common version, for example. But the other is cards we bypassed. Good cards we didn't stop at. We plowed through it. We went too fast. And that's happened to me. And you don't know what that is because you don't know what you missed unless you go back through that box a second time very slowly. I've rarely done that, but when I have, I found that, yeah, I'm going to make 1 out of 100 mistakes sometimes.
And I think we're all going to do that. My hobby friend, Bo Spencer Thompson, went to an estate sale an hour or so from his house in Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
And he hit a jackpot on 70s cards. He went back on Sunday, bought them out. There were $30 and $40 cards that people had left. He was like, oh, I did really well with a lot of this stuff. He didn't know all the football rookies, and the other people didn't either. Yeah. He also bought some stuff that was really good the first day, but I'm just saying that the third day he went back on Sunday. He bought stuff that you would say, how did everybody miss this card? And this is the 70s. This wasn't some obscure regional thing that maybe only you or I at the show would actually know about.
It's obscure if you weren't alive when those cards came out or if you've not collected them. It becomes the long tail of things that you just can't know everything. There's too many cards out there, so you can't know everything. We would know it, and if we'd have been there, we would have bought him out, whatever. But good for him. Good for him.
I'm just pointing out that he got some 70s football's Hall of Famers when he went back on Sunday. They were rookies.
The price freeze aspect, which I like to look at a dollar box because there's a certainty that it's all everything $1. I think everything was $1 when Bo was looking through that. They had the cards. Everything was $1.
Everything was $1.
And I would have been pulling so many cards that we would have been trying to buy the whole thing, but that might have spooked him. So he probably was a little more conservative at first. But again, that's like a price freeze. Every card in this box is $1. Now, which ones do you want to pick out? It can be pretty overwhelming when you're pulling a lot of cards.
And then you have to know certain things like 67 high numbers. It sounds great to pick them all out for $1, but those 10 triple prints, you may not touch for $1 because you might only get $2 on a good day for them.
So if the price was frozen, which I've always thought if prices were stagnant, how would that affect the way we hobby? I don't think it would. But for people that are looking for whales, they'd be concerned that the price is stagnant. They want the thrill of the price increases, maybe not decreases, but the increases. And there are cards that get stuck.
Here's what I always said when I was being interviewed on the radio or for newspapers. One of the advantages we had as a hobby over stamps and coins was that it's a living hobby. Actually, you're dealing with living cards on living players. If Aaron Judge just hit his 30th homer before the All-Star break and he's having another after 61 homers last year or 62, he's got 30 or more before he hit July 1st. He's having another big year. He's got a shot of being 60-60.
You can't freeze his cards. If they were frozen, people would buy them all up.
What you can freeze, though, is to say, I don't want to pay more than $1 for a card, or I don't want to pay more than $10 for a card. You can freeze that within you if you've got the discipline. What you can't freeze is the player movement before that.
What we see in the dollar boxes is frozen. If it was a really good card, by the end of the weekend, it'd be gone based on the player or the insert or the parallel, because that's what it is. People think, oh, the dealer's going to go through and weed it out. No,